Hey cousins, welcome back to the channel. It's your girl Chrissy Pips. Now listen, T-Mobile says a cyber attack exposed personal information for more than 40 million former, current, and prospective customers. AT&T might be dealing with the same thing for around 70 million of their customers. Earlier this year, there was an attack that hit 533 million Facebook users where their phone numbers and personal data was leaked online. What should we do when large companies drop the ball with our personal information? What steps can we take to prevent our personal information from being sold online? Well, today I'll show you my top 6 tips, what I'm doing to protect myself and my family. Now, don't forget to like and subscribe, but if you're here, you're interested. So let's get into it. Okay, you guys, so tip number 1 is don't freak out. Try to find out exactly what data might have been stolen. Notify any banks or financial institutions that you have accounts with, right? Close any accounts that you don't use rather than just to leave them dormant. That's going to reduce vulnerability to any secure or personal information that may have been leaked during the breach, okay? If you don't use an account, it might never dawn on you that the information in that account could have been part of a breach. You might never be notified, or you might not see the notification because you don't use that information, right? So it could definitely act as a backdoor for getting into your other accounts. So what I did personally, I took every debit card, credit card out of my wallet, and I made a little list, right? And then I compared that list to T-Mobile's website because I was part of the T-Mobile breach. Or I'm not going to say part of it. I was a victim of the T-Mobile breach, right? But what I did was I took out all my cards, and then I logged into my T-Mobile account, and I seen what cards were stored on my T-Mobile account. So it was my Visa, Discover. So was it connected to the breach? Yes or no? And then have I ordered a new card? So for the cards that were connected to the breach, I went ahead and ordered new cards, right? That's the first step that you can take, is identify what was in the breach and then change it, right? And then I know, like, I had an order that's coming in because it's back to school time for us here, right? So I had an order that's coming in and they haven't taken the money off of my card yet. So there's a card that I have that I can't reorder or change out until after that order processes. So if you have anything like that going on, go ahead and put the date down that you're going to go ahead and replace the card, okay? So that you know exactly how to move forward. So tip number 1 is don't freak out. Just try to find out exactly what data might have been stolen and work from there. Like, don't freak out. It's not that serious, but it is kind of that serious, right? But moving on to tip number 2. So tip number 2 is to create a new email account. Okay, I am going to suggest one of the most secure, if not the most secure email that you can have for free. Go to protonmail.com, and the links to this information is going to be in the description of this video. But go to protonmail.com and create a free account. Like, pro tip for you guys. I have multiple Proton Mail accounts. I have one for all financial institution information. I have one for shopping information. You know, those usernames, passwords, those little things that you want sent to your phone because you like coupons when you shop. I have one for that. And then I even have like one for my social media, right? All separate emails, but all secure emails. I absolutely love Proton Mail because people don't understand, like, it's encrypted information, right? You know how people really love Swiss bank accounts because you can't get anything out if you don't have access? Same thing with these emails, right? Proton Mail is encrypted in Switzerland, and all of the servers are located in Switzerland. That means all user data is protected under strict Swiss privacy laws. Okay, that's why people like Swiss bank accounts, because of the privacy laws over there. This email is part of that. And then, like, the end-to-end encryption, I love the encryption that this particular email uses. And I'll simplify it for you guys. If you send an email to something like Gmail, the people who run your Gmail account can get access to it simply because they can help you reset your password and troubleshoot with you. One of the things about Proton Mail is because it's encrypted, they do not have a way to decrypt any of your information. Now, there is a downside to that with ProtonMail, and that is if you lose your password, they can't help you reset it because they can't decrypt any of your information. So write down the passwords, please, okay? But I love that because if they can't decrypt any of your information, that means that they can't sell any of your information, right? They can't give away any of your information to anybody else. And I love that. So I wrote down all of my passwords in multiple places. But ProtonMail is tip number 2. And then what I want you to understand is while you're converting your bank accounts and financial institution information over to your ProtonMail and you're going through your old email addresses, don't respond directly to any requests from companies that are asking you to give them any personal data. Okay? Call those companies, check the company's websites, see if this is a real email. Because remember, your information was just stolen. So people could be doing phishing scams, right? Be on your guard for other types of social engineering. If a criminal who has access to a hotel's account, right? If they reach out to you, right? They could say, hey, I just seen that you recently stayed here and I wanted to know how your experience was. So you guys get to talking, right? And then the criminal might say, listen, you've been phenomenal. I'm happy you had a great experience, or I'm sad that you had a bad experience. And let me go ahead and reimburse you for XYZ, right? Let's say that they want to reimburse you for parking. They're going to say, hey, what card did you use to pay for your parking? Let me go ahead and start that refund process. And they're going to ask you for that card information, and you're going to willingly give it to them because you just built that rapport with them, or they just built that rapport with you, having that conversation about your experience, right? So be very, very skeptical about stuff that's coming up in the recent months because you've been part of a data breach, so you don't know how social engineering is going to pop up in your life. That's why changing over to ProtonMail is such a big deal, okay? And also be careful where you click. Unsolicited emails that include links to websites may be phishing attempts. They might be trying to get some of your information or even access to your devices that you're using to click on those links in those emails, okay? So like some of the breaches that I seen when I was doing my research for this video, they said that one of the biggest things was links inside of emails. And what's happening is just because your data was breached a week ago doesn't mean that they're going to reach out to you a week ago or in a week, right? So be skeptical. They could reach out to you years from now, and not all companies report data breaches immediately, okay? So that's a thing too. So things like antivirus software, malware software, those are things that are going to be very important if you are still continuing to use things like Gmail and Yahoo, and any other email account that's not ProtonMail, okay? If you're still going to continue to use those, just be very skeptical. But changing to a new email is tip number 2. Now let's move on to tip number 3. So tip number 3 is going to be change the passwords on all of your accounts. If there are any security questions or answers or even PIN codes attached to those accounts, you should change those too, okay? Use different passwords on different accounts, okay? If you use the same password, like I have a set of master passwords for different things, you have to think about it like this. If a hacker gets access to one of those, they get access to multiple accounts that might have that same password, okay? So change your passwords regularly. One feature of many publicly reported security breaches is that they occurred over a long period of time, and some were not reported until years after the breach. Regular password changes reduce the risk of like running into unannounced data breaches, okay? Don't use any personal information in your passwords like names, birthdays, street addresses. Those might be very easy for you to remember, but they're also easy pieces of information to be found out. Okay, so avoid using personal information. And if you're creating a master password, I think that I'll show you guys how I do mine. Like you can see it on the screen, but I'll show you how to do that. But you'll need to remember to try to use things that aren't associated with you. So maybe lyrics from your favorite song or a line from your favorite movie, right? And then just add some random characters to it. And don't replace them in easy patterns, okay? So don't use like 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? And I'll show you guys really quick like how I create my master password, because I have master passwords for different groupings of things, right? Different categories. So everything nowadays usually asks for a unique character, okay? So for this, I like to use phrases, not things associated with me, but phrases, okay? So just relax, please. Let's use this phrase. And then these numbers are not in sequential order, okay? And then we have a secondary unique character. So the unique characters are not the same, right? So they don't repeat. We're not repeating numbers. And one thing that I like to do in my master passwords is put in a word frontwards and backwards. Yeah, put one in that goes forward and backwards inside of that phrase, because one of the things that I found when I was doing research, when I first started creating like my master passwords, was that sometimes the scammers and hackers, they use software that tries to figure out what your password is. And words that are backwards make it that much harder for the software to figure out, because it doesn't recognize words that are not words. And if it's backwards, it's not a word, right? So I like to do that as well. So also, I use a phone book. You know those little phone books that you get from the dollar store that have the tabs in it with the alphabet on them? I use a phone book like that to write down my passwords. And when I write down my passwords, I write them down like this. So it's still just relax, please, right? But I just have the first, like the special characters, and then the first letter with the rest asterisk out. The first letter, because I like to know if it's capital or lowercase and when the word stops and starts, because that's how I know what word it is, right? And then what letters go with the word that I have backwards. And then if I have a set of numbers that I use, or several sets of numbers that I use. So I write down the first number so I know what set it belongs to. And this is only for my master passwords. Okay. So I have a challenge for you guys. Drop in the comments below what you think this password might be. Okay. Just what you think it might be. Drop it below and I'll tell you guys the answer in the comments in, let's say, about a week. Just to see if you guys got it. Okay. But one of the other things that I want you to do is make sure your passwords are at least 12 characters long and contain letters, numbers, and a special character, right? Some people prefer generated passwords, and those are usually like 14 to 20 characters in length. So I use something called LastPass. It generates like random alphanumeric character passwords for you. So this is also really good to write down in that book. So in my little address book that I have all my passwords written down in, the username and the website is written in ink, but I typically write the password in pencil because I change a lot of them, right? And then LastPass, it's like lastpass.com. They also have a username generator too. So I do like that website because there are some things that I do want the password to change quite frequently on, especially as it relates to my money. But that was tip number 3, was change the passwords on your accounts. So moving right along to tip number 4. Tip number 4 is turn on two-factor authentication. Most websites, especially for financial institutions, even your social medias, give you the option to turn on two-factor authentication. And what that means is you're going to put in your username and password, but it's going to ask you for a third piece of verification that has to be sent to you through text message or through email, right? Or through like an app, and I'll go over the app next, right? So when you're logging in with that information, it's saying, hey, you put in the username and password, right? But we need to verify it's you. So give us the message we just text message you, like the word we just text message you, or click on the link in the email we just sent you, right? To get access to your account. So turn on two-factor authentication. Yup, it's definitely a headache. So what? Protect your information or don't. It's up to you. I'm going to suggest turning on two-factor authentication. And that is it for tip number 4. But tip number 5, that I use for two-factor authentication is something called Google Authenticator. So Google Authenticator is absolutely amazing for two-factor authentication. What it does is it generates a brand new 6-digit code every 45 seconds. So when you log into something like your bank account with your username and password and you have Google Authenticator set up, the next thing that the website is going to ask for is the 6-digit code on your Authenticator app. And because it changes every 45 seconds, it makes it significantly harder for hackers to get the information, because like they have to have my phone in their hand or something similar to go ahead and get that 6-digit code that's generated every 45 seconds. I love Google Authenticator, and it's available for Apple and Android. So there's absolutely no bias, right? It's really easy to set up when you put it on your phone. There's a little code that you scan to get started. Usually that's from some of the exchanges that I use for cryptocurrency. If you want to set up Google Authenticator, it'll pull up a QR code on your screen. Then you open up Google Authenticator on your phone and you scan that QR code, and it populates that website in your Google Authenticator to generate codes for you. And like I said, it's a unique code that's 6 digits, and it changes every 45 seconds to something different. Now, when you're setting up your Google Authenticator, remember the little phone book that I use for passwords? Make sure you set up and you write down everything for Google Authenticator. It's going to have you write down or give you some very, very important information. When you get this information, do not screenshot or take a picture of it, okay? Write it down. It's very important that you don't take pictures of information, because if your phone is hacked, then they have the picture. So write it down, okay? Just like your passwords, when you create new passwords for the account, do not screenshot or anything like that. Write them down. But that is it for tip number 5. Let's move on to tip number 6. Freeze your credit report. If you're not making any big purchases anytime soon, it's perfectly okay to use freezing your credit report as an option. Okay, this stops anyone from using your data for identity theft or to borrow your name, right? If freezing your credit report is not really an option for you, just check your credit report to ensure that nobody is applying for any debit cards or anything like that in your name, because your information was just part of a breach, right? Please, please, please understand the value of your personal information, and don't give it out unless it's absolutely necessary. There are too many different websites that want too much information for no reason. Like if you subscribe to a business journal website, why do they need your exact date of birth? They usually just need your year to confirm your age based on the content that's going to be there, right? So put in the year, but don't necessarily put in the birth date. When you take that little phone book and you write down your username and password for this website, maybe write down the birth date that you used, right? That would be perfectly okay, because you don't want to get in the habit of having your information that's attached to you on everything, right? And then monitor your bank statements and your credit report. It's just going to help to keep you safe. Stolen data can turn up on the dark web years after the original data breaches, right? So this could mean an identity theft attempt occurs long after you forget about the breach, after your information has been compromised, okay? So listen, that is going to wrap us up here. In the description below, I've dropped links for Google Authenticator, Proton Mail, for LastPass. I dropped the information for how to freeze your credit report, the telephone numbers to Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. If you were a part of the T-Mobile breach, there's a document down there for you as well. I even included the websites that I used to do some of the research for today's video, just in case you guys want to read some of the articles that I ran across. It's scary. So if you don't want to know, don't read them. Because there are a lot of breaches that happen very often. So just the key takeaway from today's video for me, for you guys, what I really want you to focus on doing is getting your information converted over to Proton Mail. Like I said, I have one for my banking account or financial institution information, one for social media, one for shopping. Like, I have several of them and they're free. That's going to be the biggest takeaway. The second one is going to be turn on two-factor authentication and use something like Google Authenticator or LastPass to generate new passwords for you. Because these things are very, very, very important to do. As technology advances, so is the ability of the hacker, okay? So don't leave your information out there and keep putting yourself at risk unnecessarily. When I found out that not all companies report data breaches, like immediately, that was like a red flag for me. So I had started the process of moving everything over to like Proton Mail and things like that, but I actually finished it as a result of this. So that's going to wrap us up for today. Comment below. Let me know if this information was helpful. Comment below if you can figure out what that password is. But I wish you guys like an awesome and productive day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.